And let's talk about your business venture, Nomad Travel Groups.
Yeah, so Nomad Travel Groups is a home exchange platform that introduces a community-oriented approach to home exchange. So what we do is we have our customers sign up for the site. They have to undergo a background check screening. So we have strict safety protocols, but then they're invited to select the listings that they prefer. We take their preferences and match them into groups, home exchange groups, what we call travel groups. Give them a shared calendar, give them group messaging features so that they can build relationships and trust and engage in affordable stays at each other's homes. When I was in Bangkok, we got a taxi. This is back in 2010 or something. We got into a taxi and the guy immediately said, "Oh, just make sure that you keep your legs up." And we looked down, the bottom of the taxi was like, there was nothing there. Like there was no grate in between, the bottom. So the whole ride, we're just looking down at the road, seeing us under us.
Welcome to the Winging It Travel podcast with me, James Hammond. Every Monday, I'll be joined by guests to talk about their travel stories, travel tips, backpacking advice, and so much more. Are you a backpacker, gap year student, or simply someone who loves to travel? Then this is the podcast for you, designed to inspire you to travel. There'll be stories to tell, tips to share, and experiences to inspire. Welcome to the show. Hello and welcome to this week's episode. I'm joined by Marie DeCosse, an avid traveller who has lived in Bangladesh and Madagascar and travelled to places like Senegal, Thailand, Morocco, Egypt, and Indonesia, and more. Also, an exciting bit of news we will discuss today is her new venture, Nomad Travel Groups. The idea is a home exchange platform designed for everyone. They want to empower remote workers who wish to intertwine their careers with a love of exploration through a unique approach to home swapping with secure travel groups. So Marie, lots to talk about. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me on, James.
No, thanks for coming on. Where are you right now in the world?
I'm currently in Denver, Colorado. I've lived here for almost 5 years now.
Yeah, Colorado is a state that everyone tells me I should go and visit. I've been to a few states, but not Colorado.
Colorado is so beautiful. There's something about being out in the mountains. You can see for miles. I feel like you can really breathe out here. Or being originally from the East Coast, the DC area, you're just constantly bogged down by buildings, humidity, angry people. So it's a breath of fresh air when I come back to Colorado.
Angry people. Yeah. I'd like to go back to sort of like the early part of your life. Where did you grow up initially? Was there any travel in your childhood?
Sure. So I was born in DC, and then shortly after we moved to Madagascar. So we were in Madagascar for 2 years, and actually we were supposed to be there for a little bit longer, but there was some political insurrection. So we were pushed back to the US. We're in the US for an additional year and then went to Bangladesh for 5 years. So really the formative years of my life, I lived overseas. And I'm really grateful for that experience, particularly being able to live in more emerging countries, because I was able to be exposed to different cultures that most kids don't get to be exposed to, especially at that age. And it really shaped the person that I am today.
Yeah, that was my next question, actually. What was it like growing up in Bangladesh and Madagascar? Because it sounds really interesting, but also quite unique, because you don't meet too many people who maybe have migrated back over to North America, for example, and have grown up in those two countries, right? So what are the main differences, do you think, from what you could see when you're younger from maybe living in USA compared to those countries?
Well, what's really interesting is that, especially Madagascar and Bangladesh, they abide by more communalistic ideals. So it's a very community-centric, community-focused country. You have family members that live with you, from your great-grandparents to your grandparents to your nieces and nephews. You look after people. People just put people first. That was the first thing that really struck me living in those countries. And then also from the international community standpoint, there weren't that many Americans. And so you build relationships with other expats, people that have move to Bangladesh or move to Madagascar for their stint or whatever contract they're on, you go to international school. So you have this international community. And through that, you're learning so much more about their cultures, their way of life, their viewpoints. And it's a beautiful, safe environment where you can be yourself, but also broaden your way of thinking, how you operate. And so actually coming back to the US for me was a huge culture shock. It was really, really difficult to assimilate and go back to an environment where people are very much more so in their own silos. At the time, especially not wanting to understand different points of view. There was some xenophobia that I had to dispel, especially because of the countries that I was living in. So I think of those years with a lot of fondness, and I do at some point in my life want to be able to give that same experience to my future kids, my future family.
How did you deal with the language barrier in terms of those countries?
So because I went to an international school, it wasn't too difficult in my immediate environment. Everybody spoke English at the international schools. We had an Aya, which is a housekeeper, and then a cook, Udzola and Asma. We still keep in contact with them to this day. That was in Bangladesh. And so I learned certain things in Bangla from them just by being around them. We also had a Bangla class. So I was exposed to certain parts of the language growing up, just enough to get by, not really able to speak fluently. So at my age, it was easier because I had the international community. My dad, so his background is in economic development. And so he actually learned to speak Bangla because he was going into remote villages, environments where he needed to learn the language because otherwise it would have been too much of a barrier for him in the work that he needed to do.
Did he used to tell you stories or like questions he would get asked about USA, for example? Because I can imagine if you're working or living with the local population, they might have some questions about you, like, oh, what's it like over there? You know, what's the US culture like? What's the food like? What's the sport like? I don't know. Like, did he get asked a lot of those questions?
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like the US is so glamorized, right?
Yeah.
Because of Hollywood and, we're the supposedly the best country in the world. And so there were a lot of misconceptions about the US. Like it was interesting actually what people would ask. They would ask about malls. Are they actually that big? We have these mega malls in the US. What kind of fast food do you have? Is it really true that you can just drive up and, get your fast food from the window? So it was less so the glitzy glam parts of the US. It was more so these conveniences that we have that we take for granted that we would get asked about frequently. But my dad would always say, yeah, we have burgers, we have hot dogs, but I promise you this curry that I'm eating right now is 1,000 times better.
Absolutely.
It's so much better. Yeah.
Yeah, I always think that when I go to Asia, I guess they might see it on TV. I do wonder what they think in terms of, would I move there? Would I like to move there? I don't know. It's quite hard to go to US anyway. Very hard country to get into. But yeah, also Madagascar, though, that's French speaking, right?
Madagascar is French speaking. Yes. So it being colonized by the French, but also just right off of the coast of Africa, there are a lot of similarities between Madagascar and Senegal. So I'm half Senegalese. And growing up, I learned how to speak French through my mom because that was the way that I could communicate with the Senegalese part of my family. So in Madagascar, I was also exposed to it. But I think in Madagascar, because of what was going on politically at the time, we were a lot more restricted in terms of our movements. I like to think that we almost lived on a compound. It was this big property right next to these rice fields. And my sisters and I would really just hang out at home most of the time and then go to school, come back home. Our parents kept us sheltered from what was going on. So didn't find community as much in Madagascar. I know my mom definitely did through her girlfriends and friends that she would meet through the international community. But Bangladesh was really more so where I found my roots.
Okay. And outside of those two countries, because you live in there, essentially, was there any other travel in terms of your childhood, maybe like going on vacation or holidays or just seeing other places?
Yeah, so we would go to Bangkok, Thailand frequently, at least twice a year, because it's so close to Bangladesh. And that's where we would get all of our medical procedures done. So I would go to the dentist, I'd go to the doctor, I'd get all of my checkups in Bangkok, which was nice because then we could go and do the street markets and eat amazing food and just
Of course.
bob around Thailand. But in addition to that, we would go to Senegal pretty often as well. So in Senegalese culture, when you're coming back home, it is customary to go around and pay your respects to members of the family. So when we would go to Senegal, it would be for at least a month because there were so many family members that we had to drop into. If you don't do that, it's almost a sign of disrespect, especially if
Right.
you don't see them that often. So we'd spend some time in Senegal as well, and then we'd travel around to different parts of Europe just for fun. But we would generally try to go back to the US at least once a summer. And it was funny because coming back to the US for me, it was really nice because I could watch Disney Channel and all these channels that I could never get when we were in Bangladesh.
Yeah.
But after a certain point, I was like, I kind of want to go back to Bangladesh.
Oh, wow.
I don't want to stay here. It wasn't my home at the time.
It's just a very different culture, right? You mentioned earlier about the US being a bit insular, right? Not all of it, but like some of it is about sticking to yourself. The community aspect is not quite there that I have experienced in North America, same as Canada, I think, as well, compared to
Yeah,
maybe some parts of Europe and also definitely Asia that I've been to, like different vibes.
exactly. And it can seem, especially when you're coming back to the East Coast, which we were, it can seem a little bit mean, right? A little off-putting when you're so used to people welcoming you immediately into their friend group, home, whatever it is. And then in the US, having to almost barter your credibility or your background or whatever you could give them some sort of prestige in order to
Mm.
be part of that group.
Yeah, I have these conversations with my work colleagues here who are like, a few of them are Chinese, Taiwanese, Korean, whatever, Indian as well. When we talk about, like you just said about growing up, it's just a different vibe.
Yeah, exactly. And I have friends who are Bangladeshi, and their family still lives in Bangladesh. A lot of them went to school in Europe or in Canada, and they will go back home at least for 2, 3 months during the year because of that respect factor. You need to, come back home. Don't forget where you came from. I think that's at the root
Mm,
of it all.
yeah, that's very true. Okay, and I just want to dip into Senegal actually because I don't know too much about the country. I obviously know it's French speaking. Is that the place that has Gambia going through the middle of it and through to the coast? Quite a unique quirk on the map, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, it all used to be part of the Mali Empire, and then it's
Mm.
split.
And Senegal, what is like maybe some of the things that people would love to go and see and do there?
I think Senegal is such an underrated country because it's right on the beach. You get this amazing fresh seafood. The people are really friendly. It's pretty low cost to travel around. The ticket may be expensive coming from the US, but from Europe, it's really not that bad. Being able to enjoy a quiet, somewhat pristine beach, being around other expats, enjoying understanding their travels, their experiences. The Senegalese are extremely welcoming, very friendly, very music forward culture. So you'll
Mhm.
always hear some sort of instrument playing or somebody singing along the beach. The food is just out of this world. I mean, I obviously am biased, but I really think Senegalese food is some of the best cuisine you will ever have. And then just shopping at different markets and really just exploring Dakar itself. So Dakar is the capital,
Mhm.
a lot easier to get around in Dakar. But if you go to other parts of Senegal, between the time that I've been there, there's been so much development that it's so much easier to travel around. You hire a driver, you can get place else in about 3 hours, stay in a beautiful resort right next to the water, and just enjoy luxury service for a really good price.
Wow. Okay. And French speaking, can you get away with not speaking French, or is that really recommended?
I would say you could get away with not speaking French. A lot of Senegalese speak English as well. I would recommend people at least learn basic French sayings just to
Mhm.
order food or, ask for general directions, that kind of thing. A lot of Senegalese speak English, so it shouldn't be too hard.
Okay. And growing up in UK, I guess most people might know Senegal for its football. They have a
Yeah.
pretty decent football team. They did anyway back in, cool, must have been 15, 20 years ago now. And they had a decent tournament.
Mhm.
I think one of them, they might even beat France. I think that seems really cool. That's quite a long time ago. But that's what I would probably know more about Senegal is the football, and had some really good players.
Yeah, it's a huge football culture. It's really fun to watch kids play along the beach. There'll just be like miles and miles um, of football courses, I guess, right next to the water, and people will just play for hours. So
Mhm.
if you're into that, you can just join a group and you will probably play for the rest of the day. And they won't go easy on you. They'll probably love that you're a foreigner and they're going to
Yeah.
take any excuse to beat you.
Of course. Wouldn't expect
Yeah.
anything less.
Yeah.
I reckon that's the same in Bangladesh with cricket, right? I'd imagine. They probably
Yeah.
play cricket quite a lot. So if you're going to join a little group, I don't think they'll be
Yeah.
taking it easy.
Cricket and actually baseball too. There are a ton
Oh, yeah.
of baseball teams
Yeah.
in Bangladesh, interestingly enough.
Yeah. Because Bangladesh has a decent cricket team. Well,
Mhm.
it's in the world top 15, right? So not one of the
Yeah.
best, but I imagine it's like India where a lot of population do love playing cricket. Can you tell us your background in terms of career, and maybe talk to us a little bit how COVID maybe changed what you thought about your career or the way that you were going with your life in terms of your career? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Because of my experiences living abroad, I knew at some point I wanted to pursue a career that involved international travel. I went to school at the University of Pittsburgh. I went into the business school, and my first accounting class, it just made sense to me. Accounting just clicked. So I knew, okay, public accounting is the track that I can pursue, but how do I combine travel with this skill set? And then I landed on international tax, compliance, and consulting. And you would think, because of the name, right, that I'd be able to travel frequently. But unfortunately, no. Only partners and directors are given that opportunity, which meant that I would have to work for that public accounting firm or firms for about 15 to 20 years before I'd
Mm.
be able to travel. So I felt stuck, and then COVID hit, and we all transitioned to a fully remote lifestyle. And I realized that I could travel a lot more frequently. So I was starting to do what I wanted to do, but something still felt off. I didn't feel like I was doing what I loved. I wasn't pursuing, this true passion. I felt like something was missing. And that was sort of the start of me looking into home exchange, trying to figure out how to create an equitable travel solution. And through that, Nomad Travel Groups was born.
Okay. And just before we get to Nomad Travel Groups, overall, how do you think COVID has like impacted travel from your experiences? I think before COVID, it got a bit out of control. I mean, if you try and think your mind back, I think like the amount of like short haul flights there were, how cheap it was. Accommodation wasn't too expensive. It was all like getting to a point, it seems, and then COVID hit, and now we're kind of in this recovery phase where some of us complaining like, oh, there's no super cheap flights anymore, especially long haul, or accommodation's quite expensive. I'm just keen to get your
Right.
thoughts and how you think COVID has kind of changed travel.
Yeah, and it's, I really don't think that it's going to go back to how it was pre-COVID. COVID, especially in the US, changed the way people approach working. They realize
Mm.
that they can have more of a work-life balance, be more flexible, work from home, travel to different places. You don't have to strictly abide by this 9 to 5 commute into the office schedule. And through that period of awakening, people have drastically changed the way that they approach life, the way that they think about work, the way that they think about travel. It's no longer a luxury.
Mhm.
It should be a norm. So I don't see the cost of accommodation going down because all these companies are now capitalizing on the fact that people are changing the way that they're thinking. Flight
Mm.
prices are jacking up and accommodation prices are rising. But despite the cost of it all, I really always say the one good thing that came out of COVID is this change in the way that people approach life, putting themselves forward, realizing a more flexible schedule is okay. And you don't have to sacrifice your career in order to do that.
Are you worried that there's some people, maybe like the top bosses in some companies, trying to take it back to where it was pre-COVID, like in terms of back in the office 5 days a week, etc.?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of debate about this, right? Because there are some statistics that say that, well, actually, remote work is going down. People are trying to drive employees back into the office. But then there's other articles that have come out more recently, the Harvard Business Review, that has said that executives know that offering a remote work opportunity for their employees is equitable to an 8% bonus. It's a
Okay.
luxury and people want it. They're leaving companies because they're making them go back into the
Yeah.
office. So, in order to retain top talent, you have to change your approach and realize that remote work is what the people want. I will also say, though, I would give it, 5 years, this debate of should we bring people back into the office or not. Give it about 5 years because I think at the root of it all, it's these long-term leases that a lot of companies don't
Yes.
want to, they can't get out of, and they don't want that building to be left stale or that office to be left stale. So they're driving people back in, but they would save a lot of capital to just get out of that lease once it ends. So once it ends, pretty sure we're
Mm.
going to see a lot of people sticking to remote work schedules.
Yeah, they're the two things I was thinking of mine. You kind of mentioned there about there's this one hand where there's all this real estate that they've invested in, like say these leases, right? And obviously something's happened that's unusual, like COVID, but they're stuck in there for another 5, 10 years, and they have to
Right.
justify having it, right? And
Yeah.
then I guess the owner of that building would also need the rent to come in for that building, right? And it's going to be an interesting time when those leases do start coming up for renewal. Like, are they going to come back in? Are they going to say no, we don't want it anymore? What happens to that? And then I think the other side is, like you say, there's this competition. I think between like the bosses of companies where you got half of them, like not half, I don't know what the stats are, but like some that want you back in, and there's some saying,
Mhm.
well, if they want their employees to go back in, we can offer you not going in. Kind of competition about who can offer the best package, right? So it's a very
Exactly.
interesting time. Yeah,
Yeah. And when you think about this generation, we're not company loyal. We will
true.
change
Oh
companies
yeah.
because it's best for us.
Hmm.
So the people that are sticking to, or want really are pushing going back into the office, they're a part of the boomer generation
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
haven't really caught on to this change in mindset. But also, if you think about it from, a socioeconomic perspective, if we encourage companies to keep their workforces fully remote following the end of a long term lease, we can change these office buildings into apartment buildings.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah. Of course.
already,
Housing. Yeah.
exactly, already experiencing a housing crisis, especially in the US. So let's figure out a creative solution to the problem. And thankfully, people are already buying into the remote work lifestyle. So you just got
Mm.
to convince the 1% that we gotta keep this going.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely right. And the generational thing is interesting, right? I know people think the newest generation is really different and progressive. I think every generation would say that, whether you're Gen Z, millennial, Gen X, is it, and then boomer, right? At their time, they probably say they're more like progressive.
Yeah,
But I
yeah,
think back to when I started working, because I'm a millennial, right? So when I started working in late 2000s and 2010s, I don't think there's actually much difference between our generation in the workplace to the boomers because we all had to go into work. We all, at that point before the financial crisis, earned reasonable money. Everyone had a bit of income. There wasn't really a shift, right? And then obviously the financial crash happened in 2008, which caused a bit of a ripple, to say the least. But I
yeah.
do think that the new generation are really pushing for this. Like you say, they're not loyal to the company, which is completely opposite to the boomer generation who are now in charge, right? Polar opposites, where I don't think we were polar opposites of boomers when we were going into workforce. I think there's a few things we disagreed on, but not like big changes. But I think the new generation are going to really now push forward about what work should be and how it doesn't dominate your life, and they prioritize their own life. It's quite an interesting next 5 or 10 years, I think.
Yeah, and I think it has to do, one, with COVID, but also with this rise in like freelance work through content creation that's become more of a sort of career pursuit for this generation than for millennials. It was there sort of at the start maybe of the millennial transition into adult, or into like a workforce, becoming adults, that kind of thing, but it wasn't as present, and it wasn't like you knew a handful of people who were content creators. It was more of a luxury to make it in that industry. Now you have people who are high schoolers who are getting $100,000 checks for promoting lip gloss and different kinds of makeup on their platform. So I think this generation is really challenging the status quo, and I love it. I love to see it. I think we need a major shakeup.
Yep, I love it as well. And the only regret I have is I wish I was doing this 10 years ago, like this podcast or YouTube, right? When we first really had some sort of popularity in video or podcasts, right? Because I think podcasts exploded since COVID, especially like everyone's got podcasts now. But like YouTube, I went to a few events and you got people there who are my age and they're like quite big, but they just got in first. Like they're just there at the start where YouTube was back in its infancy, right back in the day. So all about timing, I suppose. But then there's probably something now that's new and that's going to be big, but we don't know what it is unless you are switched on and you're into it. Right? It could be TikTok, could be, I don't know what else. It could be AI. I'm not sure.
Right, but then it's also because of the social media landscape is so unpredictable. You just need one video to go viral.
Yes.
Right. And then you're at the top of the charts in your travel niche or, whatever niche that you're in. So anybody can become a celebrity these days. Just takes the right timing, the right viewers.
Absolutely. Okay. Let's talk about your business venture, Nomad Travel Groups. Can you explain the premise of this and also why you set this group up for launch in summer, right? Must be soon.
Yeah, so we're launching next month. So Nomad Travel Groups is a home exchange platform that introduces a community-oriented approach to home exchange. So what we do is we have our customers sign up for the site. They have to undergo a background check screening. So we have strict safety protocols, but then they're invited to select the listings that they prefer. We take their preferences and match them into groups, home exchange groups, what we call travel groups. Give them a shared calendar, give them group messaging features so that they can build relationships and trust and engage in affordable stays at each other's homes.
Hey, just a quick one. I just want to say there are many ways to support this podcast. You can buy me a coffee and help support the podcast with $5. Or you can go to my merch store with the affiliate link with TeePublic, where there's plenty of merch available to buy, such as t-shirts, jumpers, hoodies, and also some children's clothing. Thirdly, which is free, you can also rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, or Good Pods. Also, you can find me on social media on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. Simply just search for Winging It Travel Podcast, and you'll find me displaying all my social media content for traveling, podcast, and other stuff. Thank you.
So the inspiration for Nomad, started with my experience living abroad. I mentioned communalistic culture, so I was surrounded by this sense of community growing up. And then through my experience working in international tax, I was exposed to short-term real estate ventures, and then landed into the home exchange market and found that the market, especially in the US, wasn't that talked about. There were one company that came about in 2021, so shortly following COVID, but it wasn't something that really had a foothold in the US. And so a combination of my experiences, my love for communalistic cultures with a market opportunity is the reason that Nomad has come about now. But really at the root of it all too, I want people to travel frequently and feel like it is not a privilege. It's something that they can engage in. And by lowering the cost of accommodation, which is a significant barrier, especially for young professionals, you give people this opportunity to do so. And I truly feel that by traveling, you become more reconnected to yourself, but also you're able to open your mind, understand other people. It just makes you a better person. So I hope that my customers can do that through my platform.
And what countries or how many countries worldwide are you operating in?
So we are going to launch in North America initially. So Canada, the US, and Mexico. Following Series A raise, which we're tracking about a year and a half, that's when we would move into international markets. Because we have this matchmaking mechanism, initially it's going to be more of a manual process. Then once we understand our customers' wants and needs, how they operate, we will automate it. And that's when we would expand into international markets.
Okay. And this is like the same sort of idea as like a co-living space or co-working space like some hostels have worldwide. So they are hostels, like, for example, but they're not like party hostels. They're like people there who are working, but also want to do group tours, maybe like day of sightseeing or an evening of sightseeing. Is that sort of vibe?
Yeah, exactly. So it's a similar vibe without the capital investment, right? So we don't actually manage or own any of these properties. It's individuals' properties that they are listing. And then the difference as well is you're not swapping into a home where other people in the building are part of Nomad, and then you have your workstations where you can meet with Nomad people. It's more so, I want to go to New York for 2 or 3 weeks, and my home swap partner wants to come to my place, or there's somebody else in my group who lives in LA. So I'm going to do New York, then I'm going to do LA for a few weeks, then I'm going to come back to the US or come back to my home base. And especially in the US with young professionals, we've seen that frequently since COVID, spending a stint here, a stint there, just to get a change of scenery. So we're already seeing it's appealing to our target market. We're excited to see how it's going to take off.
Okay. And do you think there are other home exchange platforms on the market? I guess a lot of listeners might be saying or thinking right now, is this anything different to Airbnb?
So it's different from Airbnb because it's not a short-term rental. Our customers don't actually get paid they don't get paid out for listing their home. You can only list one property on our platform, and you have to engage in swaps in order to utilize our platform. The only thing that they get paid out is a cleaning fee, but that's still not considered a short-term rental. So it's not like you're operating a business, essentially. This is really for the people who want to pursue a digital nomad lifestyle, but don't want to give up their home, their security, their community. So they're sort of just dipping their toes into that lifestyle with home swapping.
And how would Nomad Travel Group itself make money then if there's no transaction from the home swapping perspective? Do people have to pay a subscription fee, or is there any fees up front? Like, how does that work for you guys?
Yeah, so no subscription fee. That's one of our differentiators. We operate on an inclusive basis. We're not a members only club. So the other home exchange platforms that operate or have a foothold in the US, they're hyper exclusive, very selective and subjective membership application and approval processes, which is excluding a huge portion of the market that is unfamiliar with the concept of home swapping. Because again, I mentioned in the US, it's not something that's been utilized that frequently. Mm-hmm. So we don't do the annual membership fees. What we do is charge a one-time transaction fee per travel group assignment, and then a per day service fee on stays. We collect a cleaning fee from the staying party, but that's distributed entirely to the host. We don't take any portion of that.
How would you make sure that locals benefit from this in terms of tourism it brings in? Or as you mentioned before, there's a rental crisis, right? So how are you going to navigate that?
Right. So the nice thing about home swapping is we're not necessarily contributing to gentrification because people aren't buying additional properties or renting additional properties. That one property is still being inhabited by, one or two individuals through the home swapping mechanism. But because of our group messaging feature, we're built on a foundation of community and relationships and trust. We want people to ask their host, hey, where do I go to, eat some great food around here? Is there any concerts or events happening that I can attend? Where's the farmers market? What do you recommend that I check out? So you're really experiencing that city from the perspective of the host who is already ingrained in its activities. So by having that group-based messaging system, we're able to encourage people to experience the city like a local a lot more easily. But also, we are looking into partnerships with specifically like travel centric organizations, somewhat like Airbnb, where they offer cooking classes or they offer tours, especially in Colorado. There's companies that'll take you into the mountains. So in the future, we will have those partnerships and be able to provide those services to our customers on the site as well.
Yeah, because I was thinking like Airbnb experiences, right? Not only do they do obviously the accommodation, but they obviously offer tours, daily tours, I guess multi-day tours, stuff like that, right? So yeah, I guess
Right.
there's like two aspects you could do, isn't there? Like the home swap in itself, and then obviously the host could give tips, and that's absolutely great because they'd be a local. Then there's that extra bit of what tours can we obviously give you if you want a day off work, for example, or want a day exploring.
Right, exactly. And that really gets people familiar with the city, just active in not just the city, but its surrounding areas, and really make sure that they're contributing monetarily.
Yes, and in terms of what you can offer different types of travelers, I guess this can appeal to budget backpackers or digital nomads or luxury travelers. I can't hear anything that would make either of those groups think I can't do this, right? Because the basic example would be if you're a budget backpacker, but you've got a tour that costs $500, that's probably not going to be in your budget, right? So I guess you
Yeah,
can appeal to all types of travelers.
exactly. And we're price competitive, and through this group-based approach for people who are looking for more high-end properties, they would likely select those properties as preferences, and then vice versa, right? If you both are listing a really nice floor-to-ceiling property in your respective cities, you choose each other's homes, and then you'll get paired into the same group. We do in about a year, we will roll out a service offering that appeals more to higher end travelers. This first iteration is called Nomad Light.
Are there any misconceptions about Nomad you'd like to address?
I think really just honing in on our differentiator, right? We were built for everyone. We are the home exchange platform designed for everyone. And we really do mean that. We could follow our competitors and slap you with an annual fee,
Mm.
but that goes against our mission. At the end of the day, we want people to be able to travel frequently, affordably, and build relationships while doing it. So we've come up with the easiest mechanism for you to feel safe and comfortable swapping your home, listing your home, and also making friendships while doing it, which for me is one of the most beautiful aspects of travel, all of the people that I've met along my journey.
I think it's kind of the key, right, to travel, just meeting those people, right? I guess that's
Exactly.
why the co-living or co-working spaces for hostels are becoming quite a big thing, right? Because we do have this new generation, as we mentioned previously, about digital nomads and the newer generation not being location dependent. They can go off and, not just travel, but they can go work and travel at the same time, right? So
Exactly.
it's kind of the right move, isn't it? I think it goes in line with what you said about, in 5, 6, 7 years when these leases come to an end and some companies offer, well, we ain't got an office anymore, so you get to be full-time remote. That gives you much more options to choose where to be based, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I can't wait for 5 to 10 years from now.
That kind of goes to the next question is what do you see the future of Nomad? Because obviously you're going to kick off this year and then see how it goes. I'd imagine you'll assess all the business, how it's going, but the options and the potential, especially internationally, is huge, right?
It's huge, and we're really excited about that. And we want to make sure that when we do move into international markets, it's done thoughtfully with the right partners and with the right capital. Because you could easily fail if you really don't think it through. So starting in North America initially under the Nomad Light program, and then we have 2 more iterations that we're excited to roll out. So the second iteration is, as I mentioned, for travelers seeking more exclusive services, seeking a little bit more support, like 24/7 concierge support, pre-scheduled cleaning, that kind of thing, generally at higher end properties, because the transaction fee that charge for your travel group assignment will be higher than under the Light program. And then within about 2.5, 3 years, we have another iteration coming out that I don't want to mention just yet, but it's for another segment of the market that I think has been overlooked. And we're really excited to make a product or a service specifically for them. But I think, I'm excited for our growth, and I know that we are going to achieve it. But at the end of the day, I'm really just excited to see the reviews from people, hear about how much fun they had with their home swap partners, hear about how much money they saved because of home swapping. I was able to travel throughout the US, and now I can go to the Maldives because a $5,000 trip is no longer breaking the bank. I was saving money with Nomad the rest of the time. So just really, really excited to see the feedback.
Yeah, it seems like it's more aligned to maybe something like couch surfing.
Yeah, but the nice thing about Nomad is it's not a shared property, right? So couch surfing, you would stay in a home with somebody else there. Here, you're going to be it's only single dwelling listings that are able to be listed.
And how has the pre-launch gone?
Pre-launch has gone amazing. In 10 weeks, we have more than 3,000 followers on our social media platforms. We have over 200 waitlisted. We've gotten a significant amount of investor interest, which has been really exciting. And we've been featured in 2 really notable publications, the Venture Capital Post and Voyage Denver. So people are talking about us. The buzz is going around, and I'm really excited.
What is the date of the launch?
So our target date is August 16th currently.
Right. And how can people sign up and get on the wait list?
So please check out our website. It's wetravelnomad.com. You can easily pre-register there. Give us a follow on social media at wetravelnomad. That's on Instagram and TikTok. We're also on LinkedIn at Nomad Travel Groups.
Okay. I've got some more questions, though. This is from your website, because I think listeners should know. We kind of said this already, but just to make sure there are no fees or upfront costs, and there's not only members, right? So anyone can do it.
Exactly.
How does insurance work for owners and travelers?
Yeah, so great question. We've partnered with Know Your Guest to offer optional add-on guest damage protection coverage of up to $50,000. So when a member of your travel group requests to stay at your home, you are given the option to add on insurance coverage per day of that member's stay. If you have any issues during the stay, we encourage you to reach out to us, but also our partner, Know Your Guest, and we'll make sure that you're compensated for any potential damages that could incur.
Okay, that's great to hear. And types of accommodations, I mean, RVs, is that possible? Is it any type of home? Any rules with that?
Any type of home. Our only rule is we only allow, as I mentioned, single dwelling units. So because of safety protocols, you undergo a background check, but your roommate doesn't, right? So yes, of course, we don't want any properties that are shared.
And how would it work for landlords versus renters, right? So let's say myself here, I've got a single dwelling apartment, right? Would I need to get permission from the landlord to do it? Is that how it's going to work for renters? And I guess landlords can kind of do what they want because they own the property, right?
Yeah, so we encourage all of our customers to check their building's policy, their lease, before they sign up their home on the Nomad platform. Generally, standard leases say that guests are allowed to visit the home. I think it's between a week or 2 weeks is the standard language.
Yeah.
So the way that you can do it right is if you check with your landlord and the clause is no more than 1 week within a month period or a 2-month period, you're in your travel group assignment for 6 months. So you can make your home available for 1 week this month, 1 week the next month, 2 weeks the third or fourth month, that kind of thing. There's ways to get around clauses in those leases.
Yeah, I think ours is a week. I think I remember seeing in the agreement. Yeah, I know people might be different elsewhere, but yeah, I do remember seeing that if I had a friend come and stay, it's like technically a week. I mean, you don't say anything, how do they know? But anyway.
Yeah.
That's probably, I shouldn't probably say that. Have you noticed any difference setting this up with Canada, USA, and Mexico? It's obviously 3 different countries, right?
Yeah, so it's actually been pretty straightforward. And one of the reasons that I was attracted to the home exchange market, especially with my international tax background, it's not as regulated currently, especially in the US and North America. So the short-term rental market has seen heavy regulation, especially because of the rise of Airbnb and VRBO. Yeah. But home exchange, not so much. From a legislative standpoint, somebody is swapping into your home. It's like a friend is staying at your place. So there aren't really specific taxes surrounding home exchange, like as a mechanism. We'll probably see more legislation arising within the next few years, but at the time we're sort of falling under the radar, which is nice.
Okay, probably should say that either. And in terms of your research, in terms of the 3 countries mentioned, is there any hotspots do you think is going to be popular in terms of people swapping homes? And you mentioned New York to LA or somewhere, like if they want to swap. Do you see certain places that are going to see more business?
Yeah, so our marketing efforts have targeted coastal cities in the US, and then in addition to Colorado, Arizona, and Texas is a coastal city. So we've really seen a high degree of young professionals in particular in those coastal cities, as well as Chicago. And already, I think our biggest hitters right now are New York, interestingly, Charleston, South Carolina.
Oh, South Carolina, nice.
Yeah, Miami, Florida, Austin, Texas, San Diego, San Francisco, and Seattle. And we're seeing a good amount of response from Vancouver as well as Toronto, which is really exciting.
Oh, that's where I am, Vancouver. Oh, interesting. Yeah. On the coast, right? Of course. Yeah. 26 degrees today. Beautiful. Yeah. Makes sense.
I've been to Vancouver once. I loved it so much. I would love to go back.
Yeah, it's a cool city. Yeah. I think what I was thinking in terms of the cities is there's interest and move and shift now, right? With the tech, some tech companies are going to Texas now, aren't they? So I wonder from California, I think there'll still be some in California, don't get me wrong, but I think there's going to be a movement of people who potentially could be digital nomads, right, in Texas. So that's going to be an interesting shift for you and just in generally as well.
Yeah, definitely. Dallas, Houston, Austin, huge markets for young professionals and tech.
I guess people can find out more about your opportunity on your website. So you need to go there. And I'll put the link in the show notes.
Yes, please do. And if you have any questions or if you just want to say hi, please send us an email at customerservice@wetravelnomad.com.
Okay. And have I missed any glaring gaps in questions I should ask about Nomad?
No, I'm excited for our site to launch. We can't wait to have you on. And if you have any questions, please do reach out. But I think the best way to learn about what we're doing is just to sign up and get into it and see the world that we've created.
Yeah. And your website's got a load of FAQs. I went there for some of my questions as well. It does cover most bases. I couldn't think of anything else other than what you've covered there, right?
Oh, great. That's good to hear. I'm glad it's straightforward.
I had a few extra questions about how it affects the rental market and stuff like that. I was just curious to see how that would work with that. The final part of the show is probably a bit more personal about advice for anyone wanting to start a business like you're doing now. Any advice you'd give someone who's looking to build a company or brand like you're doing right now?
Being Senegalese, I am a very spiritual person. So I feel I've always tried to listen to my heart and my gut. And what my heart and my gut was telling me when I was still working in public accounting following COVID was that something wasn't right. I woke up every day with this dread. I didn't want to do the work that I was doing. And if you feel that every day and there's something else that gives you excitement, there's something else that you can do with your time or invest your time into, I highly recommend just exploring it. Take little steps every day to dig into it, research it, ask people about your idea, get feedback, and then you'll start to see the snowball effect. You'll feel more excited to do what you're doing, to start building this company or this brand. And it doesn't have to be a huge thing. It can be something small just to dip your toes into your entrepreneurial journey. But, at the end of the day, you get out of it what you put into it. And if you love what you're doing, you're going to put a lot of time and energy into it. And you're going to find that you're going to enjoy it a lot more than a mundane job that just pays the bills.
Yeah, I talk about that a heck of a lot on my podcast. I totally agree. I think it's so key that what you do is something that you like, that's quite broad. But if you don't, you're spending 40 hours a week just doing something that's, like you say, just paying the bills. Is that enough? Some people might think it is, but actually, you don't want to get 20 years down the line and think you're wasting your life, do you? That's a bit of a sad state of affairs.
And you have one life, so why not push the boundary, do something that you love?
Yeah, I think people need to ask that question. I imagine if you're asking that question, you probably think that anyway. If you're really into what you do, you wouldn't be questioning it, right? You just crack it on.
Yeah.
Any challenges that you faced?
Yeah, funding is definitely the biggest hurdle that I have been faced with so far. It's difficult because you believe in the idea, your customers have already bought into it. We're seeing beautiful traction, but you still need to convince the money guys that this idea is going to go somewhere. But then on the flip side, right, if I were the money guy, I would want to be a little bit more cautious. I'd want to see how our launch went. So it's all about, again, building relationships. I've pitched maybe now at least 35 to 40 times to different investors. And as our month-to-month stats have come out, I've gotten more interest, more people who've wanted to follow along on the journey. Hey, we're not ready to invest just yet, but we want to stay updated. And that to me is beautiful. That's one of the best case scenarios, right? Because you like the concept. You see that it's delivering. You're not ready just now because of whatever else is going on, but you still want to follow the journey. And that means we have a good relationship, and hopefully some point in the future, you'll buy in. So fundraising has been difficult, but I'm confident that it's going to lead to securing our first raise because of the feedback that we've gotten so far. But otherwise, challenges in building a company, it started initially with, what the heck am I doing? And how does this work? I've never built a company before. I've seen companies from the inside out as a tax accountant, but I've never actually built something. Thankfully, because of my accounting background, I knew how to get a legal entity formed. I know how to file proper returns. I have people, mentors, and advisors in the finance and accounting industry I can lean on for any questions that I have. So from that standpoint, it was easier. The marketing, a little bit more difficult for me to grasp because I haven't done that in a business capacity before. But it's all about finding the right team, getting the right people in the right places. And now we have a nice, well-oiled machine that is working well, and we just need to secure that capital to get us to the next stage.
Awesome. Yeah, marketing is a big one, isn't it? That goes for any type of business, whether you're like a solo creator like me, where I'm basically marketing every day. It's tiresome.
It is.
Yeah. I got here, next question, how do you overcome obstacles? I guess that'd be more personal, right? Because obviously we all have a different journey. We're all different ethnicities and different countries. Like, how have you faced or have you dealt with obstacles in your way, and how have you overcome them?
I really rely heavily on my core friend group and family. So one of my girlfriends has been my friend ever since I think it was my 7th grade year. And she was one of the first friends that I made after Bangladesh. And that was a really difficult time for me assimilating back into the US. So she's seen me through all stages of growth, and she's basically my sister. So I reach out to her whenever I'm faced with a difficult decision, but I also lean on my sisters and I lean on my mom and dad. And I reach out to them for their own unique advice. I gather that, and then I really take time to just sit with myself. I cancel like anything that I have coming up that weekend. If it's a major decision, I turn my phone off and then I cook. Cooking is the way for me to reconnect with myself if I'm not traveling. There's something about using my hands to create something. It helps me think through things really well. And then generally at the end of that time period, I've come to a decision that I feel comfortable with. That's more personally. From the business standpoint, I rely heavily on my team and my advisors to make sure that I'm making the right decision for the business. But the process is somewhat the same. Reach out to people, sit with it, and then make the right decision based off of the best information that you can gather.
Okay. And it sounds just a pretty exciting time, right?
Yeah.
Maybe nervous, maybe? I don't know.
You know what? I'm actually not nervous. I'm almost just anxious to get it out there because I want people to experience it. I want people to dive into it, but it needs to be fully ready and pristine. And our dev team is actually ahead of schedule with rolling out the site, but we're undergoing a period of testing to make sure that everything is where it needs to be before it releases to the market.
That's a difficult period of time because you want to get it going. I think anything could be this business, could be if you're starting a podcast, could be if you're going, I don't know, traveling. You just have a date, but you can always push it back. And I think it gets to the point, let's just pick a date and go for it because there's only so much planning you can do, right? So
exactly.
I wonder if, like, in terms of 6 months' time, what a conversation would be like towards the end of the year, how it's gone. That'd be quite intriguing.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to be, well, we tried this and completely overestimated.
Changed this,
we exactly changed this around. I had to put this information out there, but that's what businesses do. They're constantly refining. And that's actually one of the first pieces of advice I got when I started Nomad was you're not going to have everything ready. Entrepreneurs who wait until they figured it all out have missed the chance to enter that market. So entering it, thoughtfully and strategically is the right step, but don't feel like you have to have it all figured out.
And lessons are normally learned, the biggest ones during, right? Post launch, post go live, whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that is the time to refine the product.
Yeah. Okay. A couple of questions. Any travel plans for this year?
It's been so difficult this year because I haven't been able to travel because I've been saving money for Nomad, and just it's been taking up a lot of my time. I want to make sure that it is pristine before it goes out. But I just recently talked to my girl group about where we want to go when everything sort of settles down and Nomad is working well. Sardinia and the islands off the coast of Italy have actually been on my bucket list for a really long time. So I'm gonna try to get that done probably by the spring of 2025.
Sure, nice down there in the south of Italy. Oh, dreamy. Sicily as well. Just a way of life down there. It's so chilled.
That's my dream, is to own a house like a coastal. In a coastal village or coastal town in Europe. Oh, man.
I think there's too much choice. I don't know where. I think Greece might be my choice, but not on one of the popular islands, right? One of the lesser known islands, maybe.
Yeah. I went to Aegina when I was in Greece, and it's a lot less known. It was beautiful. And there were a good amount of expats there. It was the middle of tourist season, barely anybody walking around, just gorgeous. So if you're thinking about somewhere in Greece, look at Aegina, and it's really close to Athens too, if you need to pop back in.
Okay. I went to a place called Carpathos Island, which is in the South Aegean Sea, in between Crete and Rhodes. So Crete and Rhodes everyone knows about, but there's a little island in between it no one goes to. And if you
Ooh.
want, and there's a smaller island next to it called Kassos, the smallest place. Honestly,
Oh,
if you want those
wow.
like classic white Greek buildings with no one around, really, a couple of restaurants serving you Greek salads and stuff. Oh,
Oh,
that's the place to
man.
go.
Yeah, it
I need
sounds
to go
like a
back.
dream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's tough being European because you go to North America, then you miss from where you're from, right? But you left there
Yeah.
originally, so it's a bit of a weird one.
Yeah. I sometimes wish that I had dual citizenship so that I could just go over to Europe and enjoy being a part of the EU for a little bit, just pop
Well,
around.
yeah, I hear you because we used to be part of it, but now we're not. So it's a nightmare, bloody
Yeah.
nightmare. And you mentioned Thailand earlier. I mean, we've got to do a shout out for Thailand. I love the place
Yeah.
all over, and there's still loads I haven't seen. So, do you have any favorite hotspots? Bangkok is a great city, isn't it? I mean, talk about what you were talking about earlier with your nomad business. If I'm thinking of a city to go straight away to, I'm Bangkok. I'm there.
Yeah, definitely. And we actually have a content creator who's producing content for Nomad. She's currently traveling throughout Southeast
Oh
Asia
yeah,
and has been in Thailand for a number of weeks. And she just raves about it because the food is so inexpensive, but it's so good. There's so many different places to go. You can hop on a motorcycle, just have fun with your friends. It's liberating in a way to be a young person in Bangkok because it's sort of in my opinion, the easiest way to get acclimated to a quote unquote emerging country's lifestyle, right? Thailand
yeah.
has been talked about for so many years
Mm.
and it hasn't really changed in the way that it operates. So you can do that, experience it without being nervous as to what you may come across. And then Thailand is sort of the bridge into exploring other less well-known places.
Yeah, it's like the go between. I went to Bangkok, traveling there 10 years ago now, 11 years ago. And I have been back since, but it was more modernized. So I went in 2013, it was quite rustic still, like, and it's before
Yeah.
smartphones, right? So you can't just order an Uber. You're going to have to like get one of the
Get a
taxis or the
taxi.
rickshaws or the tuk-tuks. Right? You're going to have to deal with that scam to get
Yeah.
anywhere, or try and navigate to the boat on the river and you get like 10 people asking you, oh, that's not the right boat. You need to come to this boat. It's like, oh, okay, right. Yeah. So a lot of lessons learned in Bangkok, but I love the city. The street food is incredible. The
Yeah.
way people get on with their lives, much more positive atmosphere. And you can go
Yeah.
luxury. I mean, there's like the classic backpacker route, but there's also luxury in Bangkok that's got everything, I think.
Yeah, the spas that you can do, but it's still inexpensive if you compare it to, prices in the
Mm.
US. I will say with the taxi, your taxi comment reminded me of when I was in Bangkok, we got a taxi. This was back in like, I don't know, 2010 or something. We got into a taxi and the guy immediately said, "Oh, just make sure that you keep your legs up." And we looked down, the bottom of the taxi was like there was nothing there. Like there was
Oh,
no grate in between in between the bottom. So the whole ride we're just looking down at the road, seeing us under us.
that is, wow, not heard that before. I actually wrote a blog about Bangkok and my experiences, I think the other week, because sometimes this comes back to me. Like I remember, like after a night out, there's like a group of 10 of us, but you can't all fit in one tuk-tuk, right? So you get two, and we're just
Mhm.
paying them money just to race like through the streets of Bangkok. I mean, looking back at it, he was racing through the streets, dodging proper taxis and cars, going through
Yeah.
traffic lights. I'm bloody hell, like when you're young, you don't
Yeah.
care, do you? But just
Yeah.
crazy experiences like egging each other on and trying to get our guy to go the fastest. And God, yeah,
Yeah.
good
It was
times.
it was that way in Bangladesh too. There's rickshaws and tuk-tuks in Bangladesh, and especially the rickshaw guys. I mean, they're these really skinny guys, generally very skinny
Mm.
men, who are sometimes pushing like 200, 300 pounds on their rickshaw, and they're racing the freaking cars.
Yeah.
And then cars don't abide by any rules. It's like one car's going this way, the other's going that way, and everybody's honking. And then the rickshaw will just cut in between everyone. It's really fun, as you said, when you're young, but then when you get older, you realize how quickly it can turn into a bad scenario.
I think what your story there, what reminds me of maybe being too close to comfort was Vietnam. Because if you get like a motorbike taxi, they are going to weave in and out, and you just don't want to look. You sort of like take it in and just wait until you get there, right? Because you are just going through these mental traffic jams, or it's just a race. It's just an absolute race. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, people are crossing the road and they're carrying babies, and you're like,
mental.
Oh, man.
Okay. And just one last thing. Where can we find yourself or Nomad on social medias and websites?
So please give us a follow on Instagram and TikTok at We Travel Nomad. We're on LinkedIn at Nomad Travel Groups. My personal LinkedIn is Marie DeCosse. Please give me a follow, reach out, say hi. If you have any comments or suggestions about Nomad, I would love to hear them. And then, as I mentioned, please do email us at customerservice@wetravelnomad.com as well. We're here for you. We want to hear from you. So I'm really, really excited that I was able to talk about Nomad and talk about myself and traveling with you today, James. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
No worries. It's been a pleasure. It's been a great chat. We're going to finish with some quick-fire travel questions. So these are normally your favorite things that you've experienced personally worldwide on your travels. They're going to cover like various subjects like food and cities and stuff. But I'm going to kick off with... It's travel question time. Your 3 favorite countries that you traveled to?
Oof, countries is hard. I'm going to say Canada because of Vancouver. I really fell in love with Vancouver when I went. I will also say Panama. Loved going to Saboga. And I have to say Senegal. I would just get shunned if I didn't. So,
okay. And 3 countries you've not traveled to that if tomorrow it was a little trip and you can go to 3, where are you going to go?
I would love to go to Italy. It's always been on my bucket list. So Italy is definitely one of them. I have been dying to go to Malaysia. I surprisingly never went when I was over there. And I've always wanted to go to New Zealand. But every time I stare down the barrel of a 18-hour, 20-hour flight, I start to shy away from it.
Yes. I mean, it's worth it, but it's long.
Yeah.
Okay. And what are your top 3 favorite cuisines that you've experienced worldwide?
I would have to say proper Thai food. And when you go to Thailand, you realize that it's different depending on what region that you're in. And it's really, really amazing to see it just crafted. So I'd say Thai food. I have to also say Senegalese food. And this is because I really want to encourage people to try Senegalese food. It is so, so good. You get both a mixture of protein or meat and fish. And then lastly, when I was in Belize, I was really shocked by the quality of the food and the variation of it. And just fell in love with it. It was exactly what I needed at the time. Rice, beans, generally plantains, and some good slow cooked meat. So I would say those 3.
Okay. Are you a sunrise or a sunset person?
I am definitely a sunset person.
Okay. And if you could live in a country for a year tomorrow, where are you going to live?
These are really hard questions. You know what? I'm going to say Italy, even though I haven't been, just because I have this fantasy of somehow finding a coastal town with a small little house and a small community that I can be a part of. So if I can find that, I'm not just staying a year in Italy. I'm staying for the rest of my life.
Okay. Can you tell me a favorite landmark? Can be nature or man-made.
This one is sort of more sentimental. There is a cross that's on the mountain range, the Rocky Mountains. So my home looks out over the Rocky Mountains. And when I first moved to Colorado, I didn't get any view. I looked at a hotel across the way, but I could see a tiny sliver of the mountains and I could see that cross. The next home that I moved to, I could see the cross from a further sort of a viewpoint. And now that I'm in this home, the cross is right front and center. So something about that to me means I'm on the right path. And it's very near and dear to my heart, even though it's not a nationally recognized landmark.
That's fine. That's fine. Has there been anywhere you traveled that you didn't like?
I think the only place that I traveled that I was kind of shocked by was Seattle. So I went to Seattle before I went to Vancouver because I missed the rain and I missed seafood because you don't get either of those in Colorado.
Okay.
And it was a lot. The area that we were in was a little bit more wealthy, which was nice, but it was really hard to get around. And then when I went into the city itself, it just seemed sort of dark. People seemed worn down. I thought it was going to be a little bit more of a fun experience, but it wasn't. And then I went to Vancouver and I was like, this is the Pacific Northwest that I was dreaming about. So yeah, Seattle was a little bit disappointing.
Yeah, because people ask here, are you going to Seattle? I'm like, well, why do I go to Seattle? It's like here, but not as good.
Exactly.
Controversially. Yeah. There might be some people listening going, well, I'm not sure about that, but hey.
Yeah, maybe I shouldn't say that because I'm American, but I'm just trying to be honest here, folks.
Yeah. Okay. What type of traveler are you? Are you a backpacker? Are you luxury? Are you mid-range? Do you prefer not flying? Like what type of traveler are you?
I'm definitely mid-range. I'm more of a proponent of flying unless it's going to be a beautiful road trip. I'm definitely the one in the group who organizes everything. Like I'll get, schedules aligned. These are activities that are available to us, and we'll block off certain days that we do the things that we like. But then in between, let's just relax on the beach and have a mojito, because that's really what enjoying time with friends is about, right? Not sticking to a rigid schedule.
Yeah. Okay. And two more questions. Penultimate question is, if you could road trip a country, where are you thinking? I
actually have always wanted to do the Badlands Drive. So from Colorado down through Utah, Arizona, New Mexico.
Yeah.
I've been meaning to do that for a long time. So I will say that first and then Europe second.
Okay. And finally, if you are to give one or two sentences as to why someone should travel and experience the world and get out there and get outside of their comfort zone to learn about the world and the people around us, what two sentences would you give?
I would say you only have one life, right? As I mentioned previously. So why stick to the same community, to the same group of people, seeing the same thing in and out every day? There's so many beautiful things in this world to enjoy and to experience. And I really encourage you to do that. And you'll find with that first destination that you travel to that's out of your comfort zone, you're going to want to do that a million more times.
That's brilliant. Marie, thanks for coming to the podcast. It's been a great chat. Learned a lot about your life, your travels, and also this new exciting business venture, which is going to be pretty cool, I think. I'm excited to keep a track of that and see where you are.
Thanks so much, James. I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in to the podcast episode today. If you've been inspired by today's chat and want to book some travel, if you head to the show notes, you'll see some affiliate links below which help support this podcast. You'll find Skyscanner to book your flight. You'll find booking.com to book that accommodation. Want to stay in a super cool hostel? You'll see Hostelworld down there too. You'll find Revolut to get your travel card sorted. Click the GigSky link to get your eSIM ready for your trip. And more importantly, you'll find Safety Wing Insurance to get that travel insurance for your trip. There are many more to check out, so when you click that link and book your product, a small commission goes towards me and the Winging It Travel podcast. Thank you in advance and enjoy your travels.